this all day. Can I tell?
Yeah.
Especially when I meet a new friend, because I'm just so excited. I'm like, Mom, it happened. New friend. She's like, stop calling me.
It's like real golden retriever syndrome. Anywho.
In a past life, for sure.
Ready?
Huzzah.
I'm also looked in. The real question is like how much of this I will leave in. Because I barely edit. So.
I love it. Please, all of it. I love a blooper reel.
Yeah. You got to start off well. But either way, we'll get started. Welcome to the podcast. This is how we start the podcast. It's a simple lead-in. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome to be here. We haven't made too much of an embarrassment of yourselves. But we're okay.
Emphasis on too much.
Too much.
But
we
in
could go
fact,
further.
Embarrassment.
I don't know. I could embarrass myself quite easily.
No.
No.
Let's be civil. Let's be civil now.
Okay. After the challenge of getting here today, you're finally here.
I'm finally here.
Yeah.
Weekend trains. Be careful. They're not our friend.
From being deep in Brooklyn.
A cool part of Brooklyn, Central Park. Long
And
live.
I did remember this morning that you were requested here. Not just by me, but suggested by previous guests. Which was Warren, who requested that you come in and said that you'd be good to come on.
Yes. Warren, it's so fun. Warren is boss turned one of my dearest friends. And actually, fun fact, and he can attest to this when we, I love you, Warren. When we first started working together, we were both kind of he was coming in brand new to a job that at that time I'd been there for years. I'll celebrate 9 years with this job in the summer. Okay. And so he had like just come in. I was in a new role. He was learning an entirely new role. And so, it's like naturally you just sometimes butt heads a little. You're learning communication styles and you're like, is it me? Is it me? Is it you? Is it what's happening? And we were able to like really effectively have like a super sweet kind of come to the Lord moment of like, oh, here are like some things, that have maybe been aggravating me, or like, I'm sorry for this time that I said this thing that was taken this way. And we were just able to like really effectively communicate as people. Right. And then that then translated to being able to just be really wonderful friends. Like he's, as I'm sure you already know and have gotten to experience, he's an excellent storyteller. He's lived some incredible lives. I've told him the day he publishes his coffee table book, I must receive the first like signed copy.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he's incredible. And so yeah, he had reached out to say, hey, I just had so much fun. I did this podcast with my friend and I told him about you. So let me know, like he might reach out. And the nature of that, it's like people either do or don't, or like time passes, or like your inbox is full and you're a fool and you don't check your inbox, and that's the story of my life. Unread messages everywhere. And so I was so delighted to see that you had reached out, and I ran back into work and I was like, it's happening, we're gonna do the thing. And he was like, yay. So thank you, Warren. Thanks for bringing me here today.
I also feel like that's a risky endeavor of, I just chatted to a guy on a podcast and he wants you to be on a podcast, because I feel like there's so many people with a podcast nowadays where you're like, I really don't know what this is going to be.
No, there are and it's also tricky because there's so many people, there's so many excellent podcasts.
Of course.
And there's so many people that maybe should have a podcast. There's so many people in which either the tone of their voice is desirable, and you're like, have you ever considered, or they just have an excellent way or views of things, or thinking of things, or presenting information in new ways. And it wouldn't necessarily be, I feel like a lot of podcasts can have difficulty finding their authenticity, or finding their, industry, we call it, you got to have a gimmick. What's your gimmick? And so I just feel, and we're always on our phones and devices, so you're just getting an influx of options. Like I'm not a huge podcast person, I have to, if you tell me to listen to a thing,
Yeah.
I will go listen to the thing, but I don't seek them out for myself. Like all of the podcasts that I've listened to have been like gifts from friends that are like, listen to this thing that changed my life. And then I'm like, wow, now I too feel enhanced. What a cool thing. Like we were discussing the
Yeah.
the ADHD. I discovered, I didn't know, Graham, I didn't know. I will listen. I'm about to sound insane.
Okay.
Remember the part where you said you haven't embarrassed yourself
no, we're
too
fine.
much. We're going in. We're jumping into the
Whatever
well.
insanity you bring, I'm sure I could probably top it at some point. So
Bet you heard it here, folks.
we can vibe through this.
I will listen. God, I'll listen to one song,
Okay.
well, just one,
Right.
on repeat. Like how
Uh-huh.
I can do that. I could do that for a month. I could listen to the same song every day, throughout my day, like a train ride home, back, wherever I'm going. I could do that for a month. I usually it's like weeks. Usually I'll listen to like one song for 2 weeks, and then what will break me out is
You'll find a new song. You're like, oh. You just get trapped in that cycle again.
yes, and then people are like, so when everyone does their Spotify Wrapped, mine's crazy.
just-
Mine just looks insane, and it takes a lot. I'm a creature of comfort and habit and nostalgia. So for me, all of the good music of I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but for my experience here in the States, like all good music was from like 2004 to like 2010 were like my golden years of like music that was changing my life. You have like Muse, Incubus, like they were putting out some really
Yeah.
hit albums. So occasionally, I'll do a listen through Killer's Hot Fuss. I'll go through the entire album for that one.
Okay.
No skips. But then I will go back
And just listen
the
to
next day,
yeah.
and it's just Mr. Brightside, or just ridiculous.
No, I feel like that's fine. I don't think I could do that with Mr. Brightside because I actually like I have like war flashbacks with Mr. Brightside where I'm like I used to work in bars and nightclubs. And the closing song and middle song for most bars and nightclubs in the UK was Mr. Brightside.
No way.
Because it was the icon that it is as a song. It was like number one or was in the charts for like forever and ever and ever. So every nightclub plays Mr. Brightside. So I would be picking up glasses and clearing up like sick from drunk people with Mr. Brightside just constantly playing. And now whenever I go to like a bar or a pub, I'm
It's
like,
like
I hear it.
Pavlov's
And I'm
dog. You're like, I don't even work here. You're
like,
just
yeah.
start.
And my brain's just like, I can't do this because it's like it's a good song, but no.
I understand that. I had a friend who it was like certain songs that you share with an ex or something,
Yes,
and
yes.
it was like, nope, like skip, turn it off, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, sorry, love you, damn it, okay, yeah, oh no, like that, I brought up a bad time, I try not to do that too
fair.
often.
Yeah, but no, I can relate to that. Like I think I listened to, like I recently moved over to Bandcamp in the last year or two.
Love Bandcamp.
Like I used it a little bit,
Big fan.
but because I don't use Spotify and I don't use like Amazon Music or anything, and I've never been like an iTunes person, I decided
Really?
to basically try to build a music library from scratch. So I went on Bandcamp and I rebought 3 albums which I already owned, and I was like, I'm gonna start
Hero.
a music library on Bandcamp, and then since then I've just been adding to it gradually. So I only have maybe 10 albums on Bandcamp because you only buy them every so often.
Wow, true.
And I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna. So at the minute, my playlist is a lot of the same songs.
Even because I feel it's so funny because I'm on Bandcamp. As a solo artist, my band is on Bandcamp, but I'm like, are larger artists like are the Killers on Bandcamp?
Well,
is
no,
that a thing?
see, this is the other thing. This is also why I moved to Bandcamp.
Okay,
Because most of the big bands I listened to at the time are independent labels. And like, whilst I love like the older stuff like Incubus and etc., Slipknot and all the stuff from the eras of most of our personal development for anyone in their 30s.
Woohoo!
They're not on there. And I'm like, well, I already own most of their albums and I've already listened to them a lot and I want to find new music. So this will force me to do that and use Bandcamp where it's only independent musicians.
Huh.
And you can still find big independent musicians.
Sure.
But they're still independent. And I'm like, cool, I can build an independent library and grow from there. Like I found you and others on there as well. Like I've been listening to this morning. So.
How fun. Yay!
Because I figured
like?
I'd check it out. Yeah.
Yes. What did you think? You're like, it's terrible. I'm just kidding.
No, I
so
liked
mean
it.
to myself.
I think what got me was there was a song about Christmas. Oh, there was a track about Christmas. There was a Christmas EP. And I was like, okay.
You listened to my Christmas EP?
I listened to the Christmas EP. I also listened to the Fuck Cancer song. And I was like,
wow. Deep cuts.
Yeah.
Old.
I
those
went back.
Wow. So that was like peak. I'd avoided Bandcamp like the play. I'd recorded Doing Anything for years, which I've discovered. Again, you know how you think you're so broken? You're
Sure.
like, and then someone's like, there's an answer. It's called this. My friend, we keep circling back to ADHD. I didn't realize, you have like the attention, like the focus and the inability to just do the task. Someone I love very much, like recently said, they also have ADHD and they have been like the primary person to point out that I have it. And it's been really fun. Like it's not it doesn't feel like a dig or detrimental at all. It feels like very saving and enlightening and like, oh wow, I'm not broken or so lost. I'm still lost. I still feel but wow, answers are really cool. Someone that understands is really cool. Yeah. And the way that they explained it is that it's like playing a video game and you see the prompt that asks the character to like go pick up the box. It's like press X to pick up the box, and any normal like neurotypical person presses X and they get that darn box. But for people like us, it's like press, square to bend down, press the O to look at the box, press this to start stepping towards and I was like, wow. And I just had like tears in my eyes because I was like, that's it. And when you try and explain that to anyone that's like, just do the thing, just you're worthy, you're da-da-da. And it's like, then you have the different battles. You're like, I know I'm worthy, but also, yes, I do struggle with self-worth. You struggle with all those things, but then having an answer or a label, a simple, not all labels are healthy, but I do believe that ADHD label has been so helpful to just identify things like why I can't do like simple tasks. But Bandcamp was a big one where it was like, I got on, like made the profile, loaded all the music, you just do a task heavy day where you're just the clip art, and that was big to like get on there and load that stuff there. And then it's funny, the Christmas EP, like peak pandemic, shot that. I'm very proud of that artwork, actually, the reindeer with the lights, and I set that up and took the picture and just was like, the Christmas EP, baby. And I made that very one take wonder style in my living room with a mic set up like very similar to this. No edits, like there's no auto tune, like I don't have programs that can do that, so you're like, reverb, I know that term. You're going into, I think I used Audacity. And I was having fun. And I was also getting frustrated because I'm not, I had no former experience doing any of that. And it was just a really cool thing to be like, we spend so much time in the music industry just like praying, waiting for a label, waiting for someone with the money and the means to pick us up so that we don't have to be the money and the means anymore. Yeah. And in fact, life can have more meaning when you're not your own money and means all the time. Yep. And so, but on the opposite side of that, just the ability to be able to be like, wow, I did this thing literally all by myself and put it up online and said, hey, buy it or don't. It's here, and I made it because I love doing this, and that felt really cool. Have I been able to do that lately? Nope.
Well, this brings us very nicely around to like a first question for anyone listening or watching, because we mentioned your work and what you do. But who are you?
Yes. Who the hell am I? Yes.
What are you all about?
It's fun. My name, I am Mariela Flor Olivo, and that is quite a mouthful. I'm Mexican American, third generation, and all of my friends call me Mari, because I'll beat my mom to this story. When we hit middle school, she was just so tired of people mispronouncing my name. She came home from like one of those parent teacher meetings, and she just verbatim, she goes, "We got to help the white people out. Do you want to be Maudie or Ella?" And I just sat there for a moment. I went, Maudie,
Yeah.
and the rest has kind of been history. And so I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, which I like to say is the non-crazy part. I cannot speak for the rest of my state. It scares me a lot. But in San Antonio, we have hearts, minds, and morals, and we try to spread that love as best we can to anyone that we know. And I grew up pretty darn poor, but pretty darn happy. You have parents that don't make it feel like you are, and that's really cool. Very grateful for that. And I grew up very lucky to have an arts life. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, which is, for those that don't know, means you just wear a lot of hats and you juggle them around a lot. And sometimes you're wearing both and they look really funny, but you like hats, so you do it. I'm an actress, I'm an artist, I'm a musician. As far as a musician goes, I'm a multi-instrumentalist. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, it's like if you hand me something, I'm going to be able to probably figure it out based on the training and theory that I have and have taken. But also, thank you, universe, I have a lot of natural abilities, and those are what have gotten me through my life.
Yeah.
And because of all those paired things, like with the natural ability and the training, I have the fortune to be an educator, which is really fun for two reasons. I wouldn't say like proudly, I have opinions on education, but I'm not degreed. I couldn't afford it. It would have quite literally, for my life and circumstances, it would have put me in a position where I probably would have been paying off my debt until death, which is like, unfortunately, and that doesn't sound strange because it's like, when you think about it, that is everyone. That is like literally the current station of our world. Like that's just where we're headed and how things are for people. But for those people, at least they need a degree to do what they do. And for me, my mom was really awesome as a degreed woman. She was a librarian by both degree and trade and an English teacher. And she, as she got towards the end of her career, which was very sadly shortened, not by her choosing, she would often point to the degree on the wall and she'd be like, "Look at this lovely piece of paper." And so obviously that leaves an impression as a child. You
Yes.
go, okay, cool. So,
Yeah.
you reach that age where you're talking about college and options. And it's interesting because all of the industries with I frequent, you are taught it's degree or nothing, and you are taught it's Broadway or nothing, and you are taught it's professional or nothing.
Yeah.
You are not taught that there are other options, and you're not given options and hope really. You're which is great if you're type A. If you're like, heck yeah, I can get on board. I'm gonna gotta catch them all, Pokemon. Cool. But if you're not that type, you're kind of set up for a life full of misery and disappointment. And so my mom was really awesome, and she kind of beat me to that. And she said, "Listen, you've been getting paid to do what you do since you were 8 years old. Why do you want a degree? Do you want to teach?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe." She's like, "Okay, do you want to teach for the school system, educate?" No. Okay, great. Well then, what would you want to do? Like, well, I think I'd want to like work for a theater someday. Okay, cool. And to both of our knowledge, that's based on who you know, credibility, the actual work you've done out in the field and industry. So we just kind of like were able to parse through and talk through it and figure out, okay, hey, probably not for me. And the truth behind that is also, I was supposed to get, and I did get into different programs like, Berklee College of Music, Boston Conservatory, and the scholarships just unfortunately, sometimes are laughable.
Yeah.
And, it was just not looking like college was going to be a thing, or at least not the direct route to get there. I actually wound up in a community college and was going to transfer credits, and I was thriving. I was so happy. But when you grow up already in the industry and doing what you do, San Antonio is a big city with a small town feel. Everyone knows everyone. So there are people, I was already having experiences, certainly by my senior year of college, of high school, where you're at the grocery store and someone like runs up and you got a milk jug in your hand and they're like, pardon me, I don't mean to bother, but like, I'm on the board of this theater and I saw you when you were 8 years old and as Tootie and Mimi in St. Louis, and then they're like, they're doing the math. They're going, hey, you're about this age. You're not at Juilliard. You're not, and you're standing there like one, a little over, like happily, like honored by the conversation, very overwhelmed by the conversation. And then you're also just standing there being like, well, incredible. If you're pulling out your checkbook, that'll be 80 grand a year, not including room and board or any of my books. So if you're offering to send me to Juilliard right now, please, what kind of fool am I? Oh, you're not? Then maybe that's quite the opinion to put on an 18-year-old.
Yes. Yeah.
That just isn't even an option for, but you don't know that. It's not your fault. Like, you mean well. Yeah. But, and so that's just kind of been my life, where it's like people mean well. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. But that can be so heavy, like when definitely. They don't, meaning well for one person that has the means and ability to do some of those things is one thing. Yeah. Meaning well for someone who absolutely does not and may never is a different thing. Yeah. And no one's fault, two different pressures, beautiful wishes and things. But I think as someone that grew up very seen and known in my city and in my communities, you hit this point where you're just kind of like, okay, wow, I think I've literally failed everyone. Amazing. Right. Yeah. You're like going to your community college. You're like, well, I'm having a great time, but everyone thinks it's a mistake that I'm still here. So what am I doing? Yeah. And so I reached a point where I was like, I got to get the hell out of Dodge, because I'm suffering here, and that's really like what led me here, to the city.
Graduates in New York.
Bless. Yeah. It's saving. Yeah.
So we have there's a couple of things there, like you mentioned, of there is that kind of thing, especially when you, like, I'm from small town, and it's one of those things of everyone knows your name because everyone sees you and they're like, yep, that's the kid, that guy knows what he's doing. And then there is that thing of well-meaningness from people you've met randomly who are just like, oh, I know you because you're such and such is such and such. I've heard big things about you. Right. And then like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, at the minute I work in a kitchen. And
what are you doing? Yeah.
Well, I've heard you were doing really well. I was like, I am doing really well.
Yeah, who said I wasn't?
I have a job in a kitchen. I'm not unemployed. That's a good start. Because they don't know the weight of the system as well. Especially, again, like, it's a small steel town. To go to university is a big deal. Mm-hmm. But they see it now as almost like the track. Like, you leave school and you're probably going to university because all kids go to university. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whereas that's just not true. And not everyone wants to bear the weight of the debt and pressure and all those kinds of things. Right. And at the same time, the institutions themselves do not set you up for a job. And that's something which isn't realized by anyone in them communities, because they see it as university means job, means high paying job as well. Mm-hmm. But when you're in the arts, there's nothing. It's you leave, you have your degree, and then you're like, okay, cool. Right. Now what? So then you go get a basic job and you're working in a kitchen again. And you're like, there's some blank areas of knowledge here, guys.
It's like, I use this, it's not a great, are you a Rick and Morty fan?
I think it's okay.
Do you know the episode of The Screaming Sun? That's just like, it comes up over the horizon. It's just always scream. To me, it's just kind of like that, where it's like you very, a cycle where it's like, how did I wind up back here? And you like wake up screaming and you're just like, like that's what that experience to me like feels like. And it's interesting because you mentioned it. I feel like with the arts in particular, we are still what they've existed for eons now. Like literally, it's like cavemen probably did art. They were like, "Me have two sticks, create drum set." You know, that's exactly how it went down.
Literally.
Were you there? I was there.
I like the idea that they had the word drum set. They just didn't know what they were making. We have two sticks. Drum set? I'm not sure what you mean, but yeah. We'll figure this out.
Is that? Do we need to make merch? Do we need to put that on a shirt?
Two sticks drum set?
I love.
I could sell that to a lot of drummers.
Oh man, but it's like it's just one of those things where it's like we I feel like in the arts, any arts industry, really, any single one of them, you're still spending so much time. Parents is one thing. Like I feel like I'm very fortunate. I didn't have to convince my parents of anything. I didn't have to be like, this is real to me. This matters to me. Thank you, mom and dad. Like, you know, but I feel like so understandably and so heartbreakingly, there are so many people that have to not just convince their parents, but like society. We're still trying to convince society that the arts matter, that they are applicable, that they are jobs and they are worth jobs. And in fact, it's just like, oh man, so again, multidisciplinary artist. Whenever I get to be a teaching artist, which is super fun. Like again, there are many degreed teaching artists, and there are many not. That are just, you know, working. We're out here, professionals working in the field, and I've been lucky enough to find a theater that honors both. Because, like, I don't believe one is better than the other. I firmly believe that a degree is only as good as you make it, like what you do with it, how you intend to use it. There's so many degreed people that regret it, or like don't use it, or don't, or they're like, man, I was taught only this and now I'm in so much debt, you know. And then there's some people that are just so happy and like killing it with their degree. And I'm not really I try not to think in black and white. I believe we could all use a little bit more technicolor in our lives in general. You sit there wearing all black, but I'm like, I see your orange on your shirt.
It's fine, I'm colorblind. So.
But you know, I've been very lucky to work with a theater as a teaching artist that teaches life skills through stage skills. They're the Springer Opera House down in Columbus, Georgia, and their children's program, a wonderful like state of the art institution. They teach children. Oh my gosh, I think we see like just shy of 1,000 kids a summer, like for 2 months, and it's a program in which the process is not product based, which again, especially in theater, but in any industry, and especially the arts, unfortunately, we are taught the product matters. Like, you're working here to get this thing, and then if this thing wasn't good enough, well, then the work wasn't good enough, or none of it mattered. And I think it's so powerful and beautiful that we're teaching our kids like the work that you put into it. That's, you know, like, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we do. And I just think that's so cool and powerful. And it's just sort of like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I think we need more thinking like that with the arts in general. Like, we tell these kids that it doesn't matter whether or not they intend to stay in the industry. And on our application, as educators each year, you know, they kind of ask you about the life skills through stage skills motto. And they say, like, what does that mean to you? And I usually go into this explanation of like, you know, hey, listen, I'm an actress and I work for a catering company. And at my job, I'm able to effectively, like, because of these stage skills, like doing scene work with a partner where you're having to listen and then respond to what you've heard, I'm able to, you know, better listen to a guest and their needs. I'm able to assess their tone. I'm able to read their body language. You know, if they're discomforted, I'm able to like stay calm and be like, you know, hey, like, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. We're going to get you that wine right away. And then sure, maybe like in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, rumble, grumble. You know,
that's a natural reaction to it.
But then, you know, you go back to that kitchen or that bar and you're working with a teammate and you're seeing them stressed out, and you're able to just kind of have this like human moment. And most customer service jobs, there's so many actors in art. There's so many artists in all sorts of customer and like relationship work, because we're taught to get people. We're taught to understand people. We're taught to, any good actor, and there are many types of actors, right? You have your more shtick and comedy, and that's fun too. Like, I believe those people feel and probably are some of the sadder of us. You think about people like, rest in peace, Robin Williams, but it's just like, if you're in more of your dramas and that sort of line of work, you really, really have to honor and feel truthful emotions in order to give the best work. Like, if you're not in some way connected to what you're doing and feeling, you're not really honoring or serving that work or that scene or that person that you're with. And so I think, I think if a degree gets you there and teaches you that, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think if your life experience gets you there and teaches you that, that's amazing. And either way you look at it, if it gets you that job, that's amazing. And I just think sometimes I think it's so crazy that we're still out here trying to convince people that the arts matter and should be taken seriously. But that's hard to do when you're literally watching those programs get cut and funding get cut. And
I mean, even like I think it's great that is the message you're giving to kids, because that's the message I try to break adults with. Because so there's a couple of projects I do where I have a zine which allows anyone to submit to it, literally anybody.
Cool.
And it's all anonymous, so you submit the work to it, so your name's not on it. And I set it up as an idea to give to adults, because adults don't create things if they're not creative people. But everyone's a creative person, which is the point.
Right.
Like, people who are into the arts, we make things all the time. That's what we do. Whereas people who have never been able to exercise that part of themselves have slowly let it die, because they were told that it was unimportant, because it wouldn't make a product, because they wouldn't make money from it. Whereas I met so many people in industries who were like, oh yeah, I used to draw. I used to write. And I'm like, when did you used to? And it's like, oh, I was probably like 12, 13, 16. I'm like, cool. What stopped you from doing it first? It's like, oh, I got a job and I wasn't very good at it. And I was like, well, being good at it is not the point, right? Being good, you don't have to be...
Make art badly.
Yeah, just like make some art. Like, do the thing. Like, the reason I make art is because the feeling of catharsis it gives me and helps me through the rest of my life, which is the incredibly important part. But there's no product there. So why not make something? And it was about getting them kind of past that fear, because everyone who approaches these things, same with like music and making anything, they get into this headspace of, well, if I do it, eventually I'm going to have to monetize it.
Sure.
And build it. And that will be the thing.
Sure.
And it's like, well, when did you learn that lesson? And it's like, well, you learn as a kid. And it's like, cool, well, then let's break that lesson now.
Yeah.
Let's adjust that view, because you can change this at literally any time. You just have to maybe take a leap in faith and just do something about it. It's like, do a doodle, do a cross stitch, write a poem, do something. And that's, like I love the idea of like giving it to kids as it doesn't need to be an end product.
Sure.
You can make something and carry that into older and older.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to like add to that, we're taught perfectionism is killing us. It is destroying our spirit. And so it's hard enough just to do it, but then you do it and then you're taught in the back of your brain that it has to be perfect. And so then that ties into, it's like, well, I can't monetize, like, in some ways it's like perfectionism and monetizing something can almost be like just so destructive, because it's like, if you've reached this perfect state where you're like, oh, I can monetize it, then you are trying to achieve that exact. It's like the science. It's like some science experiment where you're trying to achieve the same result each time, and realistically, as the flawed humans that we are, we're just not always gonna like. We're not machines. We're not going to hit that perfect mark each time. And so depending on how perfect you're trying to get something and what that monetization looks like to you or means, then we get trapped. That's where we get the these ADHD cycles where it's like, well, then you never even start because
Yes.
it's all just so daunting, you know?
And like you were saying before we started recording, it's that kind of thing of you, whatever you start, it's never finished. Right? You can make a perfect, in quotations, piece, right? But it's never really finished because you could always work on it. And it will also change once you've finished it. Like when you put it aside, it's going to change over time just based on the environment it's in, the context of why you made it. And so you have to approach things from that point of view of everything is just a loading time, right? So you load 1 or 2% and then you leave it alone. You've still got that 2%. You just go back to it and you're like, cool, 5 years later, what did I do? And I did this, it was a little bit, and I can keep going and do it like a little bit more. And bounce it along. Yeah. But people don't learn that. They get taught you have to reach 100%, and 100% is where it's sellable, and sellable is what is needed within the world.
Right.
And that's dangerous.
It reminds me, it's so dangerous. Well, it's funny. I was honestly, as the kids say, I was a little shook, like when you brought up the Bandcamp and you had seen my albums, because like the truth is with releasing some of that, once I put it out, I was so elated and joyful. And then I did the danger thing where it's like you go back after a minute and you listen, and then you're like so disappointed. You're like, like you just kind of freak out because you're like, actually I suck and this was bad. And I just feel like there, with music and art of that sort in particular, there's always a danger of hearing your growth. Like, for example, I was talking to some friends recently and we were discussing just the concept of be it actor or musician, of having to watch or listen to yourself. And I used to, oh my gosh, I used to freak out. Like if someone tried to be like, Monty, like, oh my God, I saw this video. I would have like tears. I would be like, please don't watch it. I don't even know what it, and I would want no association with it.
Yeah.
And now, I don't like, this isn't like a hair toss moment of like, I love watching myself sing, but like, I don't, I'm like, I don't enjoy it, but I don't not enjoy it. Yeah. For me, it's just, I do this live, like when I sing or anything, I can hear, I can't help but hear what I'm doing wrong. And I don't mind that because I enjoy it. I'm very, I feel like sometimes I really strip and beat myself down, but I'm also really good at being constructive, like genuinely constructive with myself. And so I have found that I really enjoy watching a video or listening to a recording as a tool to know what I need to do better, or to confirm what I already knew I needed to do better. Because I really don't ever, I will hair toss there. I know what I do wrong and how I need to fix it. Yeah. I never mind when someone, this sounds so mean, but like someone of merit, like not of merit, but like when a fellow musician or someone comes up and was like, hey, bud, like, did you notice that thing was, hey, I have something that would really help you with that. I'm like, oh my God, tell me more. Like, I'm never going to be offended about that, because for me also kind of trying to not even like, I don't even think it was a conscious effort until like someone had pointed it out to me. Someone remarked once on my always learning, always growing mindset. And I was like, yeah, no, like, tell me more. And they were like, well, whenever like I talk to you about something, you're always so like honest about like, yes, I like, do you remember when we were kids and someone would point something out and you'd be like, they'd be like, I just got this new toy. And you'd be like, well, I have that new toy too. Or you'd be like, well, I already knew about it. Because even if you didn't, because you didn't want to seem like you didn't know as much. But like, if we're still doing it as adults, we got to kill that. We have to kill that shit. Because I just think it's so much more genuine and exciting to be like, no, I didn't know. Teach me about it, or tell me more. Or even if you did know about it and your friend is explaining it in such an excited, passionate way, I'm like, I want to hear about it again just because you are so genuinely happy and excited to tell me. Like, why wouldn't I want to hear that? Why would I deny you the opportunity to like share some joy with me? Why would I be like, no, I already know
Like, you just discovered
happy,
something
joyful
new.
ray of sunshine. Yeah, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so for me, I really, really do my best to apply that
Yeah.
to arts and artistry because there's always more that we can know, or even if you know theory and have a master's in it, like, I don't know, there's always someone that explains something in a cool way, or sometimes like maybe a really like wonky, fucked up way. And you're like, brother, I just want to know how you got there. I want to know how those words just came out of your mouth. Please let
I
me
do
take
love
a peek in your brain, you know?
I recently, excuse me, I recently took my parents to the Met to see this stuff because they
How
visited, and I was like, we'll go to
wonderful.
the Met, we'll go see some art, and we'll go see history, and I love taking them round modern art because my dad is illustrator, drawer in his spare time. Never
Wow.
professional with it. He was a steel worker his entire life, but he did this all in his spare
Wow.
time. And he has an interpretation of what he sees because he has the mindset, but never explored it as a thing. My mom does not. She does not do anything like which is somewhat abstract, but she does cross stitch and she can follow patterns and she bakes and she does all these kinds of things. And I'm like, we should go see modern art because I need to know what you think.
Sure.
Right. I need to know what you see to understand how everyone else is seeing things. Because when artists look at things, you see 12 layers deep with everything because you're already looking for it.
Right.
Whereas,
You can't not.
yeah. So we went when I looked at these abstract things and we were just looking at them and was like, okay, what do you see in this? And it was just, I can't remember whose painting it was, but it was an abstract painting. It was just a series of colors, oil paints mixed in and going on the canvas, huge canvas. And my dad instantly started looking for shapes. He was like, oh, I see a face. You know, I see a face and there's like an animal here and this kind of thing. And my mom just went, it makes me feel cold. And I was like, okay.
Cool.
Right?
Wow.
We're on the spectrum of all the things you could have
Yes.
said about the thing in front of me. I feel neither of these things about this painting. Tell me what you did. And like you said,
Incredible.
it's just when someone interprets something, so sees something and they're like, oh yeah, this really reminds me of this. And you're like, that wasn't what I intended. I'm going to need to know more now because I need to correct that.
Sure.
But also, artists are the worst people for being their own critics and giving any criticism to, in general. Because I've watched friends who are very talented come off stage, and the first things they do is tell me what went wrong. They'll come off and they'll be like, oh, we messed up that part of the song. I was like, I did not notice. I didn't. This is the first time I've heard that song. How are you telling me you messed it up? Because it sounded great. I was like, oh, I could barely hear myself in my ear. I messed up this. And I'm like, stop telling me the things which are wrong with your show.
Yes.
Let me tell you what was great about your show first.
Sure.
So you have a better impression of your show than what you just experienced. And then we'll talk about things which maybe could have been improved if there is things to be improved, because you're coming at it from negative, and then I'm going to add to that. Oh yeah, by the way, like the audio was a little quiet.
Sure.
You know, something dropped out at one point. You were out of rhythm. Like, you're going to take that and add it to your own pile of stuff you've already said went wrong. And you're like, no, we had a good show.
You're already full, like you're looking at like the jar of wrong rocks. Like you add that one on top, and I'm like, my jar was already full. Like, this is too much. You know.
Yeah.
I went to an arts high. I had the incredible privilege to go to an arts high school. That was like audition based. You know, it was really cool. I don't know where they stand today, but I went to the Northeast School of the Arts in San Antonio, and I remember we were like, woo, like we were like freaking out because my senior year, I guess we got mentioned in like the Hollywood Reporter went around the nation and like ranked like the top 10 high schools, and we were like number 5, like something,
Right.
you know, something
Yeah.
like compare, like we were like, okay, like, oh, we matter. Like we were like, we matter. We did it. We made it, you know. But a great thing, my teacher, Kim Bianco, incredible woman, phenomenal performer. She had us do a really great thing. She had us practice like constructive criticism, which I don't know what other programs do or don't do that. And it's hard, it's tricky because like there's a very right and a very wrong way, very thin line of how to do it properly. And what you were just describing of your experience with your friend doing that reminded me, like we would do, you would give like three great things that were great and like the one thing to work on. And so you would lead with the positive. And I think you're so right, because being in a band now, the way that we operate, and also just remembering, because I'm still a solo artist, but I don't get to perform as regularly doing that just because good reasons. Like I'm so busy, and that's great.
Yeah.
But in both of those dynamics, I'm recognizing, as soon as you said that, I was like, ooh, an alarm bell went off, because it's like, yeah, what is the first thing we do? Like we don't sure, we celebrate for like a second. We're like, yeah, that was a great show. And then we get off stage and it's like one, two, third steps. So I did this wrong and da da da. And it's like, oh yeah, maybe we need to like cut that. Like maybe that's not, maybe leading with that negativity is actually not serving or doing like anything like other than like just continuing the like self-doubt like cycle. Like it would be, I think arts especially, honestly, anything in life really, I think bosses at like quote unquote like normal job, whatever that means, I think just in life in general, we could all do a better job of pointing out that one, two, or three positive things that we like genuinely enjoyed or got from that experience before we start leaning so hard into like what needs work and fixing. Because a negative like is not always a bad thing. No. It's all about how you present it, and it is an opportunity. I just always see something negative as an opportunity to grow, and that is not for everyone to accept. Like you meet some people, it's like looking in a mirror. You're going to meet people that do not want to see what they're going to see in that mirror, and it's not your job to make them like if they're not ready to see themselves. That can also be a beautiful and powerful thing for them to do when they're ready. But I think I think societally we could all do a better job of like pointing out what went well, pointing out what we love, pointing out what we enjoy before it's so quick. It's so easy to think about the bad. We wake up every day in this country and what's on the news, the bad. We are surrounded by so much that it is just like that's sometimes all we can think about, and I think it would be so powerful like to start pointing out more of those positive things.
Definitely.
That's what I took away from that is literally what I got. And you're like, do you have ADHD? And I'm like, my friend, that is literally what I got from you talking about your experience with your friend. Welcome to my brain.
That's the world. That's fantastic. I do the thing where I don't explain the bit in the middle. I just skip to the end. I'm like, oh, by the way, we could do this. But it's one of these things of I like you kind of saying when you were talking earlier about like arts learning and the journey you go on when you realize that you're probably going to be creative, right? Because I don't think it's one of those things which you choose. I think it's compulsive. Right. I think it's somewhat a curse at times, but it's one of these things which you're just like, oh yeah, this is in my future. Like that's the thing. So when you start learning all those things, you learn skills to accompany those things, which you then transfer to like regular jobs and your day-to-day living, and they're all the skills which other people who didn't go down the creative route end up missing in some ways. And it's not that they're bad people, right? It's just they learn to deal with things in a very different way, right? So when you introduce the two together, it's like, oh, this actually works. Like this could work as a system, and this could work as a team.
Powerful.
Yeah, it's
enhancement.
Powerful. It's powerful enhancement. Well, there was a point you made earlier, which we'll track back to, where we were talking about the idea of like, as you're saying, like the skills you develop when you're a child and how to look at the world and like saying like being able to read people emotionally, right? And reactions and those things you end up transferring into day-to-day customer service, right? And I went to uni with a very strict mindset of I have grown up broke, so the job I need to do needs to make money. So I'm going to pick the most creative thing I can, but where there is a guarantee of a job. And I went down that route and ended up completely despondent with it. And at the same time, you can have people who go down the route of, I'm going to make art, I'm going to make jewelry, I'm going to do all these things. And they instantly switch to that monetization mindset of this has to make a product because if I don't make money, I'll die. Right. And I think we get taught that extremely early on in our lives.
Absolutely.
right?
I really think we do. I think we witness it so early. I mean, it's kind of like what I was telling you, and I have a friend that did this. I had a friend that sold jewelry in like middle and high school, and it was like one of those things, and it's honestly probably kind of part of why I didn't.
Right, yeah.
Because I was telling you earlier, I don't remember if we were or weren't recording it, but it's like I used to make jewelry for fun for friends, and I would never make anything for myself. I would never. It was only ever gifts for other people, and it started because we were poor, and my mom was like, look, like we really only ever went out shopping if it was for someone else, and it was like, you don't look, you don't touch, you don't ask, we're not here for you, and you're like, yes ma'am, got it ma'am.
Yep.
And so I really, really loved, I got into jewelry making, like with glass beads and like little silver pieces randomly, specifically very early on. And it was a fun creative outlet for me. But mom's explanation also was like, look, and now you have gifts like for your friend. It was like, look, this is a problem that we have solved.
Yep.
Go, you have ADHD and I don't know that and you don't know that. So go make a thing in your room, leave me alone, and you're gonna come out with a gift for free for your friends. Yay! So many problems solved. We had no idea, Graham. We had no idea. But anyway,
It didn't exist back then.
it didn't.
Which is the thing.
We're like, life
They
was
discovered it in the
happier
early
then.
2000s. We know this.
Why couldn't they save me? No, I'm kidding. But I had a friend that, it was like for some reason, her parents, like it started out fun for her. Again, you're a kid, you're in middle school, you're in high school, but then your parents are like, hey, it could actually be cool. Like, it'd be smart. Like, hey, how you want an allowance? I was like, I had no allowance. I was like, what's that? It sounds crazy. But that was her explanation. It was like her parents bypassing allowance. They were like, you know what you can do? Actually make your own money instead. And so yeah, she would like come to school and like sell her wares. But it was like you're watching someone at that age where you're not really like supposed to have those kinds of feelings and responsibilities yet, like be so stressed of like, and then you're watching someone again so earlier in life start to judge their, like, this thing that once brought them joy, they're now judging because it didn't sell in a way that they expected to. So then they're like this, I was so happy making this bracelet yesterday in my room, and now I brought it to school and it didn't sell, so now I think it's ugly and it's not and you're just kind of like, whoa, like where and how did that happen? Because it's like, again, I do think when we're children, it's like we're so our brains are so smushy, like we take in everything and we're forming to so many different molds and expectations that people have for us, often beautiful, often scary, often a little bit of both. And so it's hard, I think, like what it all leads back to as well. I just think as kids, we watch our parents. And if we don't have parental figures or whatever, we're watching adults. Like it's a cycle. It's like, which came first, chicken or the egg? What adults in those adults' lives made them feel the way that they do today? But it's like we're always looking at our elders. I was taught very and raised very old school, so I was always taught like respect your elders, like look to your elders, like do not speak before your elders. Children are seen and not heard. And so you're like, my elders, like the prophecy. But it's hard because I think we watch so many people, and I think that's also why we have a lot of adults and a lot of our parents and the former generations are so, I think, honestly, they're so bitter and so angry because they're watching us find and experience joy that they couldn't find for themselves or allow themselves to be free and into and a part of, which is not their fault. It's like that was not instilled or capable. That was not a possibility for them. But it is the whole concept of like, well, like, we walked so you could run. It's that whole endless cycle thing,
And I mean, also to that, I think I at least always try to approach this with older generations because the reaction older generations give us is a lot of anger, right? It's anger
so
and
much.
bitter. And I always try to at least come from a mindset of, you're angry and you're bitter. What triggers that, right? Because it's not something you have, right? It's not, no one wakes up angry, right? no one
Wait,
wakes up.
what?
No one wakes up with that kind of like you know, a toddler. You wake up and you're like, no, fuck everybody. It's like,
Yeah.
Like no one wakes up unless you're, you know, a taxi driver in New York. But
Right.
but it's a reaction to something, and it's I think a lot of the older generation, it's them not knowing how to handle fear. And especially when it comes to like older generations, like my parents especially, were very much in the mindset of, we need you to do what you want to do, and we're happy for you to do what you want to do, but never put you in a situation where you're going to be vulnerable, right? So always have something where you can make money. Always have a fallback where you can make money, because honestly, they're just worried that you're going to end up on the street. And they saw their generation have anyone who explored even the slightest part of non-conventional job
Right.
end up destitute.
Right.
And they don't know how to process that. So
Right.
it comes to, well, it's weird that you're doing this, or it's weird that this is what you know, when are you going to grow up?
Considered?
Like it's that kind of thing. It's like, well, yeah, and it's risky. Like it's pretty risky, but it's just as risky as being an accountant who could get laid off any day.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just you're not seeing the parallel, because you were fed an idea which was very concrete, that job,
You
money.
stayed safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're out here like high risk,
Yeah.
high reward, baby. And then like literally falling so hard.
Yeah.
We're like, I jumped so high, my leg broke, and now I'm in so much pain. And
But
our
it was
parents
fun.
are like, well, we stayed safe in our little, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and it's a thing of like, especially as they get older, like they worry even more, because they're
Yes.
like, they're thinking, well,
They're like, I'm not
going
going
to
to be
here.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, are you good? Because
Yeah.
literally, brother, I'm leaving this planet.
Like, I'm not going to be around any longer. We can't take care of you. And he's like, you don't need to, man. Like, we're still okay. Like,
Yeah.
life is okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it kind of like all folds back in on itself, and they end up a little bit trapped.
Yeah.
But it's the same. Like, I worry when I see kids with the, what's the tag they use? It's like the CEO mindset.
Yes.
Or anything like that.
Yes.
Even like, I love the phrase girl boss, but the girl boss mindset is a business capitalist mindset.
It is.
And I'm like, this is kind of terrifying, because
Yes.
there's a 12-year-old girl over there who's doing this, and this is going to kill her. And I'm like,
Hustle culture?
Yeah.
No.
No.
We're not. We don't like her. I don't like her. And if there are people that, and again, it's hard because it's one of
Yes.
those things
Yeah.
that's tricky, because it's like, okay, right, we have like the concept that we talked about where
Yeah.
we're like, a degree, what you make of it, right? It's hard because hustle culture is what you make of it, but it is inherently evil.
Yes.
It is inherently capital, like it is inherently running our society into the ground. And so that's difficult, because for some people, they may in fact thrive or think they need that. But I would argue that it is the latter. I would argue that they think
Yeah.
they need that.
Yeah.
And they don't. And what, and you know, I just think there's, sometimes I will literally, like, can you tell I'm a passionate, like, I can be a very emotional person. And sometimes, like, Graham, I will just sit, I will think, sometimes I can like work myself up to a point of like rage and tears, because I'll just often think about, and my friends are about to roll their eyes so hard they're about to be like, oh my God, not on this podcast. But like, I will literally get into fits over two things.
Yeah.
The bartering system.
Right.
I'm literally like, whatever happened? You're like, this is not what I thought, Julie.
Sure, yeah.
I'm like, man, the bartering system these days. You're like, okay, dude. But I literally just think about how we could be out here trading. You know, like there's the Buy Nothing group on Facebook. I'm like, more of that. I'm like, we could literally be out here trading what we already have for what we need, you know, and making some really awesome like compromises as people. And two, I really, and maybe like more, I would argue more importantly than the bartering system, and there aren't many things more important than the bartering.
That seems pretty important. I'm now realizing in my space, I'm like, oh, damn it. But on the other hand, I'm not that confident in public places, so I don't know if I'd be able to barter.
No.
I'm
Find a
gonna
friend.
end up broke and
Find a friend.
someone's going to take advantage of me.
No. Well, the thing that would save you, would save everyone. I think often about how we really were just put on this planet. We were literally just put on this planet to be here and like eat berries and like make art and not just do it and enjoy it and forage and create homes and houses and things, but also just to like exist. And again, like we're like bringing it back around. We've like monetized these things. We created money. Like some evil person out there created money and made that run the world. And now we're all stuck in this system. And I'm just like, if people, I think, just like we're like, okay, hustle culture can have its good and its bads, even though it's inherently bad. I think the same can be applied to rest. Like I think each person for their needs, and whether they're like a type A or whatever, whatever type of person they are, I do believe that there's a certain amount of rest that each person, honestly, not only like to the people around them, like to better engage with the world around them, but to better engage with and activate themselves individually. We all have to do such a much better proactive job of finding and taking rest, whatever that looks like for us, however we need, because I don't know, like my rest I'm not going to take like my level of rest and apply it to everyone. Like that would be unfair and unkind, and like not, that would, in fact, there would be some very hurt people out there by some of my levels of rest on different days when I'm just like, I must rest, So I'm like, don't be like me. Like, I need a better balance. But like, if everyone found their individual level of rest that works for and best suits them, I just think societally we could like all be a little bit happier.
I could see that.
Little hustle, little rest.
And I think it's hard as well because it's like, and I don't I don't want to come across like I'm completely criticizing people who choose a life which is hustle, CEO, money, etc.
Yeah,
because like
we need them to. Like again, everyone serves a purpose.
But also,
not
I think
discounting that either. Yeah,
they don't know how they ended up there, and like you were saying earlier, of where we look to parental figures and we look to these kinds of things. If you end up in a space where all you see is your parents suffering, and you don't know why, you instead look to other adults who are not suffering, and you go, what did they do? Like, what can I take from them? And as a child, you look for very basic things.
Sure.
You look at their appearance, you look at their job, you look at those things, and you take very base level things. And you go, well, that's the key to happiness. Like, those are the things which will make me happy. And my parents are sad. I don't want to be sad when I'm adult. I can do those things. So they start earlier and earlier. And that's the whole kind of, like, spectrum of indoctrination which you get with, like, young males especially. Where
Absolutely.
they look at CEOs and they look at people... like pieces of shit like Andrew Tate, and they do that kind of thing, and they go, oh, that's the whole thing, so if I do that, I will get that, and then abandon the rest of what it would be to be a whole human being, because they just took the business human being and applied it to a 15-year-old, and that doesn't work. But they won't realize that till they're 30, and that's a whole problem.
right.
But it brings us kind of back, and I'm going to loop this around. Watch.
Please, because I won't. Like,
You're lost right now.
I need.
So what are we here to talk about today? Whether you know it or not, you've already been talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like pulling in.
Yeah. No, I love. Yeah, like we were talking about the original intent. We've gone on many tangents. They've all been a joy. But yeah, like the monetization of like our different careers and arts, and like how do you know when or if or not to, and as someone, so we talked about like these 3 different careers that I run, right? And so it's interesting because I had one of them has a subsection, and that's being a musician, and I'll sort of explain that. But for example, when I was just a solo artist, actress, and educator, teaching artist, paid job, you experience the lovely place, you're paid to be there. And that actually, I once, and they'll attest to this, but I famously, we had to have like a come to Jesus sit down moment with my band, because there was one summer where I had to go off and I gave them like 9 months notice and explained I was going to go do this like essentially back to back 2 months, so 4 months contract.
Right.
And we'd come up with these compromises and different things and ways of how that could look. But of course, understandably, then the moment hits and you're in it and you're like, oh, Madi's gone. This is hard. This feels impossible. And I really, really had to explain, unfortunately, like, I was like, this band doesn't pay me and this job does. And if you want me in this band or even in New York City, then I have to make the money that literally allows me to be in the place and do this free thing that, if, and it was like really hard, because also you're talking to people that, that are privileged, like in certain ways are aware of that, but like maybe not always maybe not as highly as aware. And so that's like news to them. They're like, oh yeah, like that's right. Like we see it as like Madi went off, had fun time, bye bye Madi. And it's like, no, Madi wakes up at 7 a.m. and goes to bed at midnight, and teaches all day and does lesson plans and is in a show and is still rehearsing your music and doing all of those essentially off the clock for free. So now doing a million free things for all careers, and so we really did just kind of have to have like a come to Jesus where I was like, look, I was honest about like how I could participate in this project. And when I say I have to do something, I'm not, it is have to, and I know the arts are fun and I'm having a great time on this contract, but I am making thousands of dollars that I will never probably see from this band until we're signed. And that I'm certainly not making in New York right now. And they were very, thank God we were, I think I put it much kinder and succincter, more succinctly than that probably all just came off. But like, we were able to have like some really good heart to hearts and understanding about that. But then it's interesting because when I was a solo artist, I made so much money. I was so happy. I was so like, that paid my rent. Like there were literally months where I made rent just by being a solo artist. Right. And so that's hard because like, for example, and there are so many musicians that face this split and we're in all different tax brackets. We're in all different class levels, if you will. And so it's so hard because it's like, for example, I have friends that whatever, like full-time job they have or whatever financial background or situation they're coming from, a lot of people, their solo career is the fun, dabbly part. And then maybe the band is the more like, okay, hunker down and sometimes vice versa. But for me, it was vice versa, but in a much more necessary way of like, oh, once I joined a band more full-time and I lost the ability to be a solo artist in this more freer, like willy-nilly way, it was a really hard sacrifice because all of a sudden I lost a steady stream of income because all of a sudden you're battling, because like, people make the argument all the time and it's true. Like, and I certainly still try in a lot of ways, but like, for example, the argument, and thing that I'm currently grappling with is like, just because you're in a band, like there should be no one world and one thing that exists. Like I refuse to like give up, I will never be up giving an actor or any, and vice versa. I would not give up the band to do, but it is interesting when you kind of split being a solo artist and band member, because for example, Wednesdays through Sunday nights are like prime time gig nights. No one's going to come to us. No one wants to come to your show on a Monday night. Sorry. No one's going to come out on a Tuesday for sure. Sundays are a toss up because depending on your job that you work to survive, you either have to go to bed at a certain time. So really what you're really looking at prime time, like Wednesdays, midweek, people want to be out, they're like midweek, it's almost Friday. And then certainly, and Thursday's a toss up, but Friday through Sunday is like people are out, they're at the bar and whatever. So all of a sudden, if you're a solo artist and you're in a band, you are competing for those nights for both projects. Yeah. And you can only promote one really well, fairly. So it's like, I'm a solo artist and I'm trying to get that Friday night spot, but the band comes up and says, hey, we just booked a headlining, da 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 da. Then all of a sudden you're like, well, I can't do that because like we need that for our trajectory or and all of a sudden you're like, that's okay, and you let that, you like take that hit. But what also takes that hit, like your wallet, because
Yes.
you're not making with that
One's a
night
paid gig and one's a split
the
through.
money. And it's hard too, because it's like if you're in a band,
Yeah.
you are always, and people will roll their eyes or cry with me when I say this, but it's like, of course the dream as a musician is that you're making money from your art. The reality of that situation is you're not making money until that label signs you one day, and that weight of those burdens, as long as like until you reach that point where you're no longer financially responsible for those certain aspects, you're really not going to see that. So as a solo artist, as a band, whatever, if you're super, super independent and you're on your own, you are always working from and working off some kind of deficit that all, and so it's been interesting, because like I've been in this band for 3 years now, and it's interesting to just see financially how that has impacted my life, and so then that's where the other two hats come in, and it's like, all right, well, as an actor, because this operates a certain way and I love that and I want that, and that is like a thing that is like genuinely desirable, well, now that means for acting, I can't just do that free gig or that fun thing. Now that has to make up a certain portion, and teaching gig, it's like no problem, but you do just have to be like, oh, I don't think I can be gone for that amount of time, so it's hard, because it's just kind of like you're always constantly trying to balance the scale in some way, but there is no balance. You work and live with the knowledge that at any given time, there's always going to be one thing more in the spotlight. And what matters is the reason why. It's like, okay, well, are you doing this in the moment because financially it's helping alleviate these other areas? Or is this like, maybe for thing highlighting because you're doing okay, and maybe that needs to be the focus now. And then it's like the other struggle of just trying to find that job, that like quote unquote like real person job, that allows you to balance all three and hopefully alleviate stress from all of those, and somehow give you rent, and somehow still allow you to have a schedule that allows you to do all of those other things. And that is my daily life and struggle, is like I've been very lucky because I work a lot. I leave a lot. There was a good year where I was in and out of the city every other 2 months. There was one year where I literally spent half of my year working in Georgia. I was out there for a total of like 6 or 7 months, leaving and coming back every 2 months. And people were like, Madi, how the hell are you doing this? And I was like, well, I had very understanding partner that was like, okay, like I'm covering my half, like here's a discount, on some of your rent. And then there were months where it was like, you know what, don't worry about it. And you're like, amazing. But I also have these jobs where it's like, thank God we both appreciate each other and see the need. Like, it's so important, I think, in New York City, whether we realize it or not, you have to make an impression in some way. If you are going to work in an industry that requires you indefinitely, you have to kind of find a job that requires you indefinitely and make them care, or not even make them care, but like you have to become valuable to them in some way, and vice versa. And I've been very lucky to find jobs that have had that flexibility, either naturally within their game plan, if you will. Like the catering company I work for hires actors and artists specifically because they're like, hey, we know you're going to go on that national tour. Shoot us an email. We work from an app. You swipe right or left, like the dating app, to accept or decline shifts. And like, we'll see you when we see you. And then I have like a retail job that I've been with like literally in and out for 9 years, that I've just been as communicative as possible and been like, hey, in a couple months, I'm going to be gone for like 2 months, and then I'll be back, and I'm here. And I'm just very, very fortunate that they work with that. I've had jobs that have not been able to accommodate that. And that is like so understandable, as long as like all parties, like I'm very, very good. Like I will literally go into an interview and I don't mince words. I'm like, this is who I am. This is the exact way my life operates. If that is going to be a problem, I in fact beg that you not hire me.
Yeah.
You know. It said, that's enough. No. Battery. I'm like, and now it's just me. No, I'm just kidding. I start really, really going off the cuff. I'm like, for my next jazz standard, I will be singing Cry Me a River, featuring my actual tears forming the river. The worst comedy hour ever. They're like, this program is canceled, actually.
It's done. Weirdly enough, there's only been one person who's ever cried on the podcast, and it was Warren.
No way!
Yeah. And it's just because he's a very honest person who's just very surface level. These are my emotions, and they're coming out. And I was like, this is an incredible moment.
We're so... Please spend a day... We'll have you crying too. Warren has seen me cry
So many times.
more than like most people should. And I love... Warren is cool. We have like literally cried together over things at work and just deep embraces. And I gave myself... I'm really, really glad to hear that Warren has cried, because I actually gave myself a pep talk on the walk over. I was like, you will not cry.
Wow. I don't even know if that's a good impression of me.
No.
Like, you're going to this man's house, you will not cry.
You're going to this new friend's house, and you will be a good... That's probably my mom coming out. She's like, you will go, and you will have a good time, and you will be well behaved. And if it gets back to me that you...
we had a mild interruption. Okay. It's interesting kind of hearing all of that, because so the conversation I have a lot with the people I work with, because we work a very, very 9-to-5-esque job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Holiday days, vacation pay, those you earn it as you
Vacation
go
pay.
along. Right?
We'd love to hear that.
I know,
Come on,
right?
my friend, let's go.
You earn it as you go. It's
What
something
is
you
that?
have to be like, you have to plan everything, you know, especially with creative stuff. I have a lot of creative friends where we work, and they're like, they struggle because time is finite. You work a 9-to-5 or a 9-to-8, or, however many hours you have to work in whatever week you're working, and you get home and you're like, oh, I got to make things now. Oh, like what?
The exhaustion.
Yeah, the exhaustion.
Totally.
You get to the weekend and your friends are like, hey, do you want to go do this thing? And you're like, I was going to make things, but also I love my friends. I need to go see my friends and do this kind of thing.
Right.
And you really end up in a balance. And like you having to balance all these things which you found can be flexible or made flexible through the way you work. It is a very big challenge as an artist to sit down and go, which one is going to break first?
Totally.
And I think most artists...
The fear, too.
Well, yeah.
It's what you spoke of earlier. Like, we're trying to avoid that fear. So when you have to, you're like, I would rather not, actually.
Yeah. And I also think there's a mentality within artists where they worry if they stop, they'll never start again.
Yes.
Right? Like, you take 2 months off to go do a job. And they're like, when I come back, I'm probably not going to be able to make music anymore. And that's like, I won't know how. And you're like, I'm sorry, you took 2 months off and you're worried you won't know how to make
You're
art?
18, you're whatever amount of years of work. Yeah, you're like, just 2 months was all it took.
Like, oh no, it's like when you exercise and you're like, I took a week off and now I don't know if I can ever go to the gym again. And you're like, you took a week off. Like, I think if you step back in, you'll probably be okay. Like 4 years off, that's hard to break.
No, I won't. Yeah. Yes.
Like, that's the whole thing. And there is very much a fear. It's a fear of just like, well, what if I mess up one, all of them fall, or, if I have to juggle all these things. And I think, I almost feel like, sadly, a lot of artists try to do everything all at once to begin with, and they wait to see which breaks, and none of the things break, but they break. And you end up in a decision space where you're like, okay, this went badly. I ended up in a bad situation, bad lifestyle, or, bad mindset of whatever I'm doing. Which one of these things can I give up? And money's always going to win when you're in that headspace, because you have to pay rent. And then it does become well, I'll take it easy on the art stuff. I'll quit the band. I'll stop performing and I'll focus on my job.
Mm.
And then 3 years down the line, they're like, oh yeah, I used to be in a band. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Used to is
it's such a harsh word.
Oh,
But yeah.
it's one of the saddest phrases I think in our
Yeah.
existence. And I mean, it depends on the power with which you say it. Like,
Yes.
I actually have a friend recently that decided they no longer they were, and they're kind of adamant about it. They're like nope. Like I recently, they're like, I know I'm only like 30 something, but I did retire. They're like, it's not I failed. They're like, I was a stage manager. I'm not anymore. And that is perfectly okay. Like there was no, like, I made a choice. I made a decision. And I'm like, oh, powerful. Because again, arts especially, it's like, oh, if your career trajectory doesn't look like this, you're a has-been, you're a da-da, you failed, you didn't hack it, etc. And I think there's so much power in deciding how, like, what used to means to us. Like, it can be said, and like tone, inflections, like these are all things, text is so easily misconstrued. Like it's all so important. And there is such an interesting difference, like a notable difference between that person that is like, oh, I used to be in a band, or like, oh, like I used to be in a band. It was so fun. I'm not anymore. But like, that sounds great for you. Like power. They've reclaimed their power.
It's hard as well in a way to tell other artists about it. Right?
Yes.
Because if you say to, like, if let's say, musician, and you went to your friends, I'm not going to play music anymore. I'm gonna focus on these other bits. I've just decided I'm done with music. I'm going to be acting, and that's going to be my thing. All your friends would be like, oh no, but you're so good, you're so talented, you're so amazing, and also you should keep yourself open to any opportunity, because no never means no to ever, forever.
Right.
Because they want to support you, because all of their structure in their life is, I want to support you, and as an artist you should be open to the world and you should invite all things.
Right.
But there is a level of, well, people should make their own decisions as well.
Totally.
And you should let them in there. Like years and years ago, like I said, I went to university, but I studied film and photography.
Yeah. Wow.
I left uni. 5 years after I left uni, I said to myself, I'm probably never making another film.
Yeah.
Because I don't care. I don't care about the technical cameras.
Yeah.
I don't care about what the next technology thing is, how to make it the crispest image in the world. I just mentally do not care. I care about the story and the concept.
Totally.
Therefore, I'm probably never going to film my own film ever again. And I said this to friends, and they were like, oh, but no, but you could figure it out. You could figure out how to make your own short film. It's like, no, I can make a short film. It's just not going to be the most technically accurate, crisp thing in the world.
Sure.
I'm just deciding not to care about that.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do
You're
that.
like, no, there's power here.
Yeah, like I used to do that. I'm just
Yeah.
going to focus on the stuff which I want to focus on, which is the concept and the story and the dialogue and all those kinds of things. So like, oh, it's weird that you're shutting off an area. But when our other friend, who decided to be a sound engineer, decided he was not interested in cameras, because he had a very clear line of, I'm going into sound engineering, and never said, I'm never picking up a camera ever again.
Language.
They took it as,
so important.
That's amazing. You've chosen your passion.
You're over here like arms up, like the
sorry,
John
what?
Travolta meme, like looking right, looking left, like.
But again,
What?
it came down to, there's a product at the end of sound engineering where there isn't necessarily a product, the idea of a concept.
Right.
And that's hard to describe to a friend and balance alongside of, oh, hey, by the way, I need a job and I need to make money and pay rent and all these things.
You're like, also, are you paying for this beer? It might tab of yours. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting when you say it, to like talk through it, right?
Yes.
There are so many moving pieces you have and you're keeping track of, but at any point you could stop some of them and life would continue.
Yes.
Right? So you're choosing to do it.
Always a choice.
Rather than some situations which people end up into because they keep saying yes, which is a harder challenge.
Right.
Of, yeah, I'll be in your band. Oh, you're also got a band? I'll be in your band. Oh, you're doing this? I'll do that. And then they burn out because you've said yes to everything and you want it to be supportive.
Right.
And that's hard to do.
Right. It's interesting. Like the band had an awesome opportunity.
What's the name of the band, by the way?
Oh yeah, we're called Camp Bedford.
Thank you. I know
And
it, but these
yes,
guys don't know.
right, everyone. Yes, no, it's fun. We Camp Bedford is it used to be, its full name was Camp Bedford Rescue Squad, and that was based on like a funny story with a former member getting lost, quite literally in the woods, and like had to go be rescued. And so when I joined, the project became, they were like, we're thinking of shortening the name, and I said, yeah, great idea. And I'm like, maybe we're the rescue squad. Like we rescue each other. And they're like, yeah, long live, you know. Bedford's like a subtle nod to Bedford Avenue in Brooklyn, which none of us live off of. Like we're all in Brooklyn, but literally not that side of
None of you are
Brooklyn
in
at all.
Bedford,
We're like Ditmas Park, Sunset Park, baby, you know. So that's fun. But we've had in the 3 years that we've been together, we celebrate officially 3 years in July, and we've done honestly like some unheard of things, like all by ourselves in just the short 3 years that we've been together. And I feel like sometimes we all recognize that like deeply, and we're all, you know, every type of person is existent in this band. Like there's a type A, there's type B, there's me. I'm like constant, in a very happy way, like mediator, and like we're all business brained, but in very specific ways and aspects. And like, you know, whenever there's like a missing piece, one of us has the answer. A very cool and like interesting, and you know, for the most part, like a very, very healthy dynamic. And so I feel like sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we need to or should be doing that I feel like a constant person that's like, well, look at all that we actually already have done, that I guarantee you, I promise you, is unheard of for like most people our age.
Yes.
And certainly I'm like, I know bands that have been together for 10 years that haven't done half of the stuff and won't do half of the stuff that we've done. And not even necessarily because it's like their trajectory is different or anything. It's just like there are so many circumstances that we have really taken full power and control over, and in very like meaningful and capable ways. And it's just like, in a society that tells you you will never be and you are never doing enough, it is so you have to be so proactive about being like, but here's what I can do and have done, and for now, like that deserve, like even if it's not enough, that deserves to be recognized, that deserves to be like credited. And so but we went on an awesome trip to Portland, Maine, drove up to record some background vocals for a friend. Very exciting weekend. We've discovered that we love in a car, one, to do vocal a cappella rehearsals. Very useful, very fun, great way to pass time and really just like tune into each other and ourselves and just clean some things. But we've also discovered like the power of a business band chat in the car. And so like recently, you know, going back to one of your earlier points, like I was able to, in order to, I don't even know that I was actively recognizing that at the time, but like something that you just said about like the burnout and like recognizing that you can and can't do. We're talking about the different capacities in which we wanted to contribute and felt we were able to exist and contribute to the project. And so, for example, we have a dynamic where one member is a former performer and awesomely, my bandmate Roxanne runs a bat conservation society in New York City. She and her partner Ryan do some truly incredible work saving the bats on this coast, and are now like expanding just kind of like into the US, trying to work with different programs. And so that's like, you know, some of her heart's passion. But she will be the first to be like, I'm not a solo artist and I'm not interested in doing that. And then you look at Kaylee and I, and Kaylee is like a wonderfully like has a wonderful, remarkable like solo career, like you know, and is very good about being like, hey, I'm still doing that, and I'm also in this, and I also, you know, work for this like organizational company, and like cool. And then there's me. I'm like, I have all these hats. I'm a little crazy, you know. I feel like the joke in theater, I think it's like a Hamilton reference where it's like you have the sisters and it's like Angelica, Eliza, and then it's like and Peggy. I'm like, that's me in like every friend group. Like there's always some like organized person, and then I'm like coming in kind of chaotic, half in tears. I'm like, I'm here, I made it, I'm alive, surprise everybody, you know. And so I'm the one that's like, I still do theater. I still do all these things. I need to do all these things. And here's what I can contribute. And so, because we're all three separately writers, we were just talking about like how we wanted to write for the project. And so, for example, Rox and Kaylee were wonderfully explaining, like how they wanted to contribute in that way. And I was very honest in saying, you know what, like, gosh, I hope this isn't taken offensively. I do not feel called. I do not feel led to write songs specifically for Camp Bedford. And the songs that I already have, because like we each joined this dynamic, like the band had existed for years. Several names, different members, was actually founded by two men that are like no longer in the project. Like,
Right, yeah.
like it's had a lot of lives. And so, you can do so much with that. And so, like, for example, when I joined, I brought in a couple of songs that I'd had that were mine for years. And then I had to face this thing where I was like, well, oops, okay. Like, well, there's certain songs that I need for my solo album that haven't had time to do yet, but that's fundraised and ready to go. And now I have to I have to business strategically think about that and think about what would serve this project and duke it out and be like, all right, who's getting what? And I have to look at that objectively. Like I can't be like the power of friendship. Like I have to, like, as much as I want to, I have to be like, nope, in order for like each to succeed in good ways without resentment building, I have to like be honest about that. And so I discovered, when I first joined, I brought some songs in that are great, like that the project has enhanced, that it was like good move, good call. Like I'm so glad that we could all collaborate and that those things could be contributed. Now going forward with writing, we all have different writing styles and we're all on different timelines and deadlines. And so like, for example, I expressed in the car, I was like, I'm not a deadline person. Like I can't, like the power of TikTok, like does not work on me. Like I'm not writing songs for TikTok and we're not, like they would be the first. They're like, well, we're not either. And I'm like, no. Like there is that's not even a question or argument, but like, I'm not influenced by what I see online. I'm not influenced by like that one TikTok that talks about what you should or shouldn't be doing. I very much, and it's a product, like it's learned. It's like my life, like my life has worked out in a way that everything comes to me like when it's meant to, because I've been actively working for it, because I've been prepared for it. Like I don't believe luck is like just luck. It's like, nope, it's like you were ready for that opportunity. Like if something came knocking at your door and you in fact weren't prepared for it, you would lose that opportunity or it wouldn't have come in the first place. So I'm just kind of like, there are different ways to look at those things. And so for me, I was like, yeah, I'm really not like a deadline writer. I'm not really like I was like, I can contribute in a way. Like if you say, here's this theme that we're thinking about writing of, like, if anything comes to mind, let us know. Like I was like, yeah, I can work on that. But like, I was like, honestly, I don't really feel led to like write a song and then be like, this is for Camp Bedford. It just, I don't know. Then I'm like, I'm not saying that's forever. I'm not saying that's finite, but I'm just saying like actively in this moment, that's where my head and heart are at. Like if that's a problem, let me know. Like we can communicate, we can keep it open about that. But I just want to be clear, if there's a certain expectation, here's what I can do, and be honest about that. And
that's hard to recognize as well in yourself. Like,
incredibly, you feel like a failure. You feel like, oh man, I'm sorry to like let you guys down.
I think I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what often stunts artists when they try to do the balance. Right, when you try to do the balance and you sit thinking, well, I'm working my 9 to 5 and then I go home and all I do is watch TV and eat. I'm not making anything, and you feel really dreadful about it because they haven't sat down and gone, well, how do I actually make things? Like the things which I've made before, where did they come from? Was I making them by setting myself a schedule where I'm going to write every day, or saying I have to make something by the end of the year? Did they come out of that, or did they come because you were sat there one day and you went, I have an idea, and I'm going to explore that idea and I'm going to see what happens? And it's extremely difficult to recognize that that's probably the way you're creating, compared to other creators who can say, we are going to make an album. It's going to have 12 songs. We're going to write 12 songs. And we're just going to tick box this. They'll be great. It'll be great. It'll be a fantastic way of working. but not everyone works like
Yeah.
that.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would make me
Yeah.
so miserable, you know,
Yeah.
and it's fun because like we're actually in a compromise of that. We're like
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
for example, we have this existing catalog already of songs that's like we're trying to catch up to putting online. You know, like there have been some new things written,
Mm-hmm.
some old things written that aren't out but should, and so we're in this good middle ground where it's
Mm-hmm.
like we have enough new and enough old that we don't need to beat the horse. Like we don't need to over
Yeah.
exert. Like for our band in its current state, there is no need for like that 12 song, you know, like this constant chug chug chug. And so we had a really really excellent meeting where it was like we sat down, we were like 6 songs this year, like
Yeah.
2 single, like, you know, 3 they're gonna be, or like 5 songs. We were like we're gonna do like 2 singles, put the rest on an EP, release this live version of a thing, and and that felt so much more navigable than
Yes.
like, okay, we're gonna like I don't know why that's probably looping it back, probably the ADHD, but probably like for whatever reason my brain takes in that information
Yeah.
so much better than being like, we're gonna write 12 songs this year, like here are the themes, like da, da. Like
Yeah.
that might be so clear and like great for some person. That would literally probably make me want to quit a project. Like if I were told that I had to work that way, I would literally, with the utmost of grace and like no ego about it, I would be like, oh man, it sounds like you need this, and that's just not me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna help you find that new person if I'm allowed, and also if I need to F off, I'm gonna do that too. But like, you know, I would find a way to like be like, nope, you know, but I'm so grateful. Like we're, you know, we're not that's not a necessity. That's not like me reassuring the band. I'm like, guys, I'm not like guys, I'm in, I promise, you know. But you know, it's so nice. I think it's really powerful. Kind of, I feel like a really good, genuine theme throughout all of these different tangents that we've gone on is the baseline and bane of human existence, where it's just like the way you communicate is so important. If you can be an effective patient, first with yourself, and then like so important, like if you can't be patient with yourself, how can you be patient with other people? Isn't love like that? Like if you can't, RuPaul's like, if you can't love yourself, like how the hell you gonna, you know?
Yeah.
But I just feel like sometimes we don't look at ourselves we're not able to like communicate within our own brain what our needs are. So then when someone else comes in with that, since we haven't communicated here, we can't communicate with them, and it's just like patience overall. If we could like learn to be patient and find our own needs first, we would then be able to know what those needs are within a group of people. And sometimes life is cool. Sometimes like I've been really grateful for the moments where I don't know what I want at all, actually, maybe, and then I'm inserted into a new dynamic, and then you're learning in real time. Like I've always been good. Like the compliments I get at jobs are great with people. Like, you know, they're like happy, great with people. You know, great customer service, but ability to like think on my feet. Like if you throw me like in that deep water, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm going to have a very like miserable time, but I will in fact figure out how to swim and figure it out. And I think that's a fun thing, kind of like tied with communication, where it's like you can always hope for the best in a situation in which you're having to be communicative. And when that doesn't happen, the ability to just kind of like stay open to what you're processing, and then start thinking on your feet and figuring out in real time what you do or don't need. Like I love, like kind of, I said earlier, I was like mediator in this band has been super fun, because I always love, there are times, as you can tell, I can be a very opinionated person, but not so much so that I'm never going to want to hear out someone else's ideas or thoughts.
Yeah.
And in fact, usually there are certain subjects and things like theater or music where I'm always going to have a strong opinion, sometimes perhaps wrong opinion, that I'm not afraid to voice first. However, 99% of the time, I'm so much more interested in hearing other people's opinions first to compare it. Like I'm usually not looking for other people's opinions to inform my own.
Yeah.
I have my own, and I'm trying to see if it enhances or changes that opinion. And if it's so starkly different, I want to know why.
Yeah.
And then, find that compromise. Like, we had a situation last year, actually. It's been a wild year, Graham. We Camp
It's only
Bedford.
March.
You're like, damn. The Cliff Notes version is a former bandmate left the project
Right.
in a way that we're honestly still recovering from, but
Yeah.
well on the road to recovery.
Good.
And we had a moment where like no one wanted to compromise.
Yeah.
And I was watching that, and I was so grateful that in that moment I was like, oh, I'm so grateful that I didn't voice my opinion first, because like we got two very strong opinions happening, and now I'm able to like listen to both and then find an answer.
Yeah.
And it was basically like and it's just one of those moments where it was like, I want to do this. Well, I want to do this. Well, that's not what I want to do. Well, this is what's happening. And I was like, ooh, okay, you are both right. Your truths are each your truths, but they don't have to be the whole truth. And I was like, shit. It was like, Marty, 3, 2, 1, you got to chime in, brother. Like, go.
Yeah.
And I was able to be like, hey, you're both right. Why don't we take this part of what you want to do and this part of what you want to do? And then here's what I think would bridge that gap. And they both were like, hey, Marty, might be onto something that, and that's a fun thing. Well, that situation was not fun, anything but fun. But like
Yes.
the ability to do that, like
The idea of the concept of what happened, not the topic or anything else going
not
on.
the experience, like not the
Was
would
good.
10
Yeah.
out of 10 would not do again.
Yeah.
But in that moment, just being like, oh man, like, yeah, the power of listening, communication, having an opinion, being able to effectively communicate all of the above and listen. Like, it was one of those things where, like, again, going back to an earlier tangent, we talk about theater and how it's applicable. And if I were not able to be a good scene partner on stage, if I were on stage constantly cutting off my scene partner's lines before I'm supposed to speak, I'm not listening to them. I'm not engaged. And I was able to just literally mouth shut, eyes, ears, heart open, and find that moment to like interject and be like, okay, actually a potential solution, hear me out,
And again, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head of rolling through, discovering what makes your process valuable to you, right? What you like about what you're doing and what you create is how you create, and those are two things which aren't always connected, right?
No, you're so
People
right.
hate their process, but they love what the end result is, and they're going to do it every single time and get to the end and be like, okay, but I remembered now. I remember why I like this. On the other
The
hand,
light comes out. Yeah.
people love the creation process, but they never like what they have at the end of it. And
Right.
those are like really early lessons which are valuable to artists. Again, kind of coming back to the point of how monetization of your art will often kill your art,
Absolutely.
because the first system we're introduced to is a monetized system,
Right.
right? It's checks and balances of how do you get things? You pay for things. How do I get stuff to pay for things? You make a product which people want to buy.
Right.
And that's a very early lesson. Even in preschool, we are given toys which represent that, and we're told it's give and take and it's sharing and all those kinds of things.
Right.
And so everything you do after that single point is judged in that.
Right.
So you're thinking, oh, well, if I make, I have to put in this and I have to do this and it has to be a product at the end of this, which I can then sell, instead of just going, yeah, maybe that's not the way I make. And maybe that is the way I make. But who knows? And when you
Right.
get to an adult, you're like, oh, and now I have responsibility on top of making that
Yeah,
decision?
yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Now this one thing is kind of set, and now my schedule's about to be kind of set. Where does that leave me?
Yeah, what do I do? Where do I go from here? I don't really know. It's funny when you're talking about like being on the extra side of things, or like the abstract, when two people have very core ideas. There's a running joke within my friend group of, I'm kind of like weirdly calm and life is pretty constant in most things I do.
Yeah.
But on the outside world, I have quite an abstract alternative lifestyle compared to the people who are, going to get married, have kids, settle
Right.
down, have a regular job, those kinds of things. So they come to me as advice, and it's that meme which you see where it's like some person's in like their underwear dipping Oreos into whiskey, and they're like, "It's good that you came to me."
Yeah.
You understand
Step
the
into my
situation.
office.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's like
yes,
just step in.
yes.
It's like
I'm glad
it's
you've
gonna be
come.
madness, but you'll be fine.
Not the Oreos and whiskey. Incredible.
Who cares if Angela at work hates you? Fuck Angela.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I heard Angela's a bitch.
Exactly.
And I only know that because you've told me, but
Yes.
I agree. Yeah.
It's like it's
Poor
fine,
Angela. Sorry,
know.
Angela, wherever you are.
Not all Angelas are bitches.
Not all it.
Not some of them have to be.
Yeah.
Statistically.
Yeah.
In some ways the same way
Honestly,
some Ryans
pour
have
one
to be
out.
dicks.
Honestly, dip an Oreo in that whiskey for Angela, wherever she is,
Fine.
working hard. She'll be fine.
But
It's
I think we came around to a very good point of like how to work, and how I don't think there's a true answer of how to avoid getting trapped in it.
I think you're right.
I think it's almost like you have to do that moment of recognizing you're doing it more than anything else. Because
Right.
even if you figured it out, you're going to end up in a situation down the line where at some point you're going to be unhappy, and it's that decision again becomes, why am I unhappy? Is it just the things I'm making? And do I need to recognize that and remembering all that kind of thing?
Right. Kind of finding a point to like an earlier point you made. It's like you find what works for you.
Yeah.
It's like there is no overall universal answer, but like as long as you're finding what genuinely, I think also the power of like, we're so often told what we should do, or like you're like, well, here's what we're, and someone's like, no, here's actually what would work for you. And you're like, well, actually, I think that I decide what would
Yes.
work for me, and just kind of really like
Yeah.
honing in on that at the end of the day. Like, as long as you feel good and sustainable, that is what is actually going to,
Yeah.
unless you talk to your therapist and the therapist is like, actually, but that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole issue of
Another
how to
episode.
deal with advice from
Yeah.
various people. Because my brain does that thing where someone's like, no, this will work. It'll be good for you. And I'm like, oh, no.
No.
What did you say again? What's the opposite of that? Oh, we can do that? Okay.
Opening up another pack of
Yeah, it's
Oreos with whiskey, another pour, another.
And they're like, no, that's really good for you. I'm like, oh, really? Well, salad it is then. And that's self-recognition. That's knowing what I'm like.
Powerful.
But this brings us around to my last two questions.
Yes.
We roll this through as an overall concept. Last two questions are unrelated to anything else.
Oh, I
which
love
we've
it.
discussed.
Please.
What is some genuinely good advice for people? Doesn't have to be art related, can be anything related. But if you want it to be art related, what is some genuinely good advice for people? Oh, the cogs are wearing.
It sounds so goofy because
It's fine.
we see it everywhere, right? We're always like, you never know what someone else is going through.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we have to treat ourselves and others with so much patience. I think we often put an emphasis on kindness, which is true. We need to be kind to people. I think there's a difference between being nice and kind to people. And there, especially in New York City, we find so many people that are nice, but maybe they're not kind, and vice versa. And I think a lot of that ties in to patience. I don't know why, like I can't really explain that through line, but I just feel like these days I'm witnessing so many people stressed and unhappy, and it's because they're not patient. Like you're cooking in the kitchen, you accidentally slice your hand and you're like, and you're upset, and you're like, oh, it's okay, and you're like, and it's like, maybe if you just done that thing a little bit slower, that thing wouldn't have happened, or whatever it is. And I just feel like if we could all have a little bit more patience, that would open up a gateway to, you can only, I don't know, it's not necessarily true, but I feel like sometimes I find that you can only be as kind to other people as you are with yourself. But sometimes we're not very kind to ourselves and are miraculously kind to other people. But again, that's where I think patience ties in, because I just think if you can learn how to be more patient with yourself, that then gives you the grace to allow and see that in other people, because we really can't see a lot for ourselves. We're always like constantly looking and thinking to and for and about other people. But I think, it's like all the things that people tell you where they're like, fill your own cup before you do whatever. I think like patience works in the same way. Like if we could all just be a little bit more patient with ourselves, I think that'll open up a gateway to all kinds of other ways, caring ways, good ways that we can treat others.
I appreciate that. I think that's pretty solid advice. You know, and I can see the throughway. You know, and I do think you're right. There is a lot of kind, or a lot of nice, or a lot of friendly,
A lot of friendly.
who are not friendly.
No, yeah.
And it's a very misleading thing.
You're like, there's a glimmer in your eye that I don't trust. Not
it's
a cool
like you're
kind.
smiling, but the words you're saying do
Don't
not match
match.
this smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like you ever see the smile, but the eyes are like dead
Yes,
or menacing,
yeah.
and you're like,
And the same way, it also works the same way with like anger. It's like, you seem extremely angry.
yes.
But-
They're like, I'm great, I'm fine. Teeth.
Yeah,
grit. Yeah.
I don't really know what. Yeah, no, but no, I
Yeah.
think that's solid advice. All right, which leads us to our very last question as well. Who should I speak to next? Obviously, you were a recommendation. And who should I speak to next? Sadly, Warren I found on my own.
Well, yes. I'm like, bring Warren back. Bring Warren back. Oh my gosh.
There you go.
I'm trying to think of like specific people. I'm like names. I'm like all of it is floating away. But I would love to hear you if you haven't already spoken to. I think it'd be interesting for you to talk to another film, like
Okay.
like the way that you chose. I think it'd be interesting to hear from someone either with the same dynamic or opposite dynamic, or maybe a dynamic in which they're like, I chose this specific portion or part of filmmaking to go into. Like I chose to focus on this. I think it'd be interesting because
But do you know anybody like that?
I know. I'm like, it's interesting. I have a friend who works for HBO that
Okay.
actually had a crazy situation where it was like, they were like away from, like they'd moved away and now they're back. It was like they'd moved away. They weren't with HBO, but now they're back with HBO. And I'm like, I bet you have so many stories to tell there. My friend is Max Richardson. So I'll see if I can find them for you. But you would, and they've known me. The crossover's going to get crazy. Like there's me and Warren.
Yeah.
But Max and I have known each other since we were 8 years old, and recently had a very powerful, cathartic, like wonderful reconnection at their most recent birthday. And so I think you would love the way their brain works. I think the crossover like episodes would be funny. And I just think they would have some really interesting and awesome insights into their world and industry. And I'd just be curious to see your two minds, your two film brains. Like it'd just be interesting to hear about your experiences.
You get involved with that. The funny thing would be is if he comes on and he's like, I don't want to talk about film.
Yeah. He's like,
chosen
actually,
something completely
no thanks.
different.
Yeah.
I think that's lovely. All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a delight. Well worth the trip to
Yeah,
New Jersey.
the long train journey and all those kinds of things. But on that note, we will round it out and we will talk to these guys later.
Yay!
All right.